Welcome to Functional Medicine for Real World Impact. I am your host, Tracy Harrison, and today I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Lara Salyer. Thank you so much, Lara, for coming on to the podcast and sharing your story and your expertise.
As always, Tracy, it's a pleasure to co-create with you. We have such synergy and it's always fun to have these conversations. So thank you for having me stop in.
You are very welcome. And I'm excited for all of you to hear today, not only about Lara's journey, which is another success story in well-applied functional medicine for a practitioner, but Lara has an expertise in what we call practitioner activation. This can make all the difference in the world between having lots of knowledge, even good expertise in functional medicine. You may even have a lot of the business knowledge, but you struggle to implement it, to have the career of your dreams, right? The practice that you've always wanted. So we're going to go there today. And I know Lara is going to have a lot of juicy insight to share with you. Welcome to Functional Medicine for Real World Impact, where we're diving into the complex, interconnected nature of health and disease, exploring not just theory, but practically what it takes to turn functional medicine insight into powerful, practical, real-world results. So please hit subscribe and let's get started. But to get us started, Lara, I would love for folks to hear a bit about your story from your original training and the practice you used to have, and share that whole journey and transformation with us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to. I think it could be best summarized as the story of a regular Midwest woman who's finally allowing her intuition to drive the car a little bit more than logic. And it's just been an evolution, like many of those that have been called to the art of healing, the practice of medicine. I sat in a room of 800 people in a biology 101 lecture at the University of Illinois, and I was pre-med. But I knew that felt not quite exactly what I wanted. I sat next to a stranger who said something about osteopathic medicine that led me on a rabbit hole to go, yes, that's more holistic. That's what I wanted. Spoiler alert, if I had heard somebody say naturopathic medicine or function, I probably would have gone there. But I knew it wasn't typical. And so I followed that nudge and ended up getting into a medical school, an osteopathic medical school. And as I'm following these nudges, just saying yes to what feels right at the time, I landed in a career in family medicine in a rural setting. And I loved doing what I did. It was full scope. It was babies to grandmas doing fracture care and lacerations in like a country doc setting. And I thought that would be my forever job. But then you have a family, you have 3 kids, you have your values shift. You start to explore that, there's other things driving medicine in my heart and in the true art of healing that I wasn't able to capture in that visit. Not to mention, sadly, my osteopathic skills had withered on the vine, wasn't really using anything like that. And I just kept feeling frustrated with how this was shaping up. And this is over 10 years ago now. Again, listening to my intuition, Tracy, our administrators said you get X number of dollars for CME each year. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go out with a bang. If I'm going to stop this medicine thing, I'm just going to go and find the coolest looking conference and take that money, have a fun little last doctor conference, and then I'm out. Maybe I'll be a cake decorator. Maybe I'll be some kind of contractor somewhere. I knew that physicians have skills. We have skills that we've cultivated like anybody does in a career industry. And we get these ideas of pigeonholing that we're only good at that one thing. But I knew that my skills could go other places. So I thought, okay, let's go see what this functional medicine is all about. I ended up in a conference. It promised organic food and yoga. And I thought, sure, I've never been to Austin. Let's try this. And when I walked in, 5 days later, I walked out with a different dream. And I walked out with these stars in my eyes going, what would that look like if I could do this in my small town? If I could be a functional medicine physician and really get into more of an educational role, more of a motivational and like a deeper dive and geek out about biochemistry again, right? And so I was in talks with my administrators to do this. And the long story short is it wasn't a ripe market. It was a rural area. They didn't understand
Mm,
functional medicine. So, I went off and did it on my own. I said, okay, thanks for talking. I'll do it on my own.
yeah.
And, being an entrepreneur has its bumps and bruises. But for me, it was a really fun journey of self-actualization, of learning to, really keep on focused and meeting other people and learning from them and setting up my business and eventually landing on this, a membership model and just finding out all the ways to make functional medicine applicable to a naive population that didn't quite understand. And then
Mm,
that led me down to eventually meeting you, because through the years, practitioners would see what I was doing and then say, hey, can you help me with that? Can you show me how to do that? What about my community over here? And one common thread that I learned from all of this is we all need to learn from each other, really, truly. It's not
mm,
that I have all
yeah.
the answers at all. People are seeking my coaching, but it was like very much out of, hey, I don't have all the answers either. But what we need is this connection, this community, so that we can help each other, because healthcare is simultaneously crumbling and also reemerging as this beautiful opportunity for us to embrace this change as a collective and go, you know what? This kind of service only helps a certain number of complaints or diagnoses or people. What about all this other area that we can help humanity thrive and have longevity and wellness? And so having all these practitioners working together, if we all learn to really take ourselves not so seriously, learn, beginner's mind, learn to cultivate and forge our own, knowledge of what makes us, brilliant, and also what are our shadows, and kind of work through that. All of this to mean that doing functional medicine is not just great for your patients, it's so good for yourself, because you're learning a lot about your own ways to find your own wellness and balance in a world where medicine kind of wants to soak you up and chew you out and burn you out.
Mm. Wow, there's so many juicy insights in that. But you were clearly, to your point, you were looking at, maybe I'll go into a completely different field, a completely different role. That speaks to how burned out you felt
Oh yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
what you were doing. I know you and I speak of this often, but this is alarmingly common, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in today. I feel like I'm constantly reading articles about, burnout and overwhelm in conventional or traditional medicine, the system in which people are asked to try and function, much less perform at their best, is getting increasingly stressful and a tight, confined space. I have so much compassion for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to share a little bit about what was that like for you emotionally, not to harken back to
Right,
the
right.
heaviness, right? But I think
Yeah,
a lot of people are feeling this heaviness,
yeah.
this maybe I'm just in the wrong place. I'm skilled at what I do. I'm prepared for, I'm trained for this career, but does it really resonate with me? Does it fit me as a person?
Yeah, yeah. And I think these are important things to sit with, and they're not comfortable, because when we have uncertainty, it can feel very scary. It's much easier to stay miserable. It's so much easier to stay predictable and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm not the happiest, but I can do this. And that might be the answer for some people. They might say, I've got 5 more years left, or I'm okay. That's fine. There isn't a right path for everybody. But for me, being a young mom of three that had finally paid off her medical school loans, and I'm looking at this going, I'm going to be doing this for the next 25 years. Like, I couldn't do it. And that was an exercise that my therapist had said, imagine yourself. Can you do this for the next year? Can you do this for the next 5? Can you do it for the next 10? And as I went out there, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think I could do it. Originally, I said 4 years. It was a leap year day, February 20, what would that leap year be? 2016,
29th?
2016,
Oh,
2016, February. And I said to my nurse after a long day, and I had gotten memos from administration saying, you've got to, take down pictures of your family because it has to be corporate branded now. You can't have personalization on your fashion. I was
mm,
wearing boots and a skirt, these memos. And I'm like, wow, we don't have agency. I can't pick my schedule. I can't pick what I wear. I can't decorate how I want in my office. I can't teach how I want. And I told my nurse, in the next leap year, 4 years from now, I'm not going to be here. And now in that state of mind, I don't think she knew what that meant. She said, are you okay? What do you mean you're not going to be here? I said, no, I think I'll
Yeah.
find something else. I felt really distraught. And you feel like you don't have an identity when you're burned out, because that is a form of grief. Burnout is grief in the brain. It's the same brainwave pattern under a functional MRI scan. And the reason it's that, because you're anticipating that you're thinking your future is going to look a certain way and it doesn't. So
Mm.
grief can happen, if you think you're going to live in this house for 20 years and it burns down, or you think you're going to have grandma next Christmas and she happens to pass away in April. Grief happens all the time in our lives, and we have support around grief. We have Hallmark cards around grief. We don't have any support around burnout. It's a
Mm.
taboo. It's a silent thing. So a lot of physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, people in the healing arts are suffering right now, and they are worried and uncertain and scared and wondering, how am I going to make this work for the next 25 years? And that's
Mm.
scary. And you have to sit with that uncertainty and also know that you deserve more. You shouldn't be suffering. And so there are ways to advocate for yourself, even still staying in the system, right? Looking for alternative ways of practicing, looking for all these other things. But the long and short of it is burnout travels with you. So my solution of I'm going to start a new career was very enlivening to me. And I felt like that helped my burnout. But that does not mean that just going to a different place is going to make you suddenly not burned out, right? I see it all the time. People jump from the pan into the fire. They're like, I'm just going to go into my own business and I'll be fine. But like, we really have to take care of ourselves and know ourselves really well. And it requires this honing of your skills to really reflect your shadows and your strengths. And that's where we look at supporting with networks, mentoring, coaching. In order to do this work, you need those people to reflect back some blind spots that you might not be aware of. I wouldn't be where I am today without teachers and coaches that I've been partnered with and mentors that I love and cherish, because they were able to have those conversations with me to help me, straddle and get out of burnout and get back on the path towards what I need.
Mm. I'm really struck with the, as always, your understanding, right? You have such deep awareness and knowledge of kind of the inner work that people have to do in order to make these types of significant change. And I would say transformational change, right? But significant change in careers, and perhaps especially in medicine or in healthcare, right? Because of the general collegial and industry expectations that you're trained in this thing and then you'll start doing it. And that's going to be the next, 20, 30, 40 plus years.
Right.
And that continuity, that stability, and inside a box, right? A set of fairly tight expectations. Saying no to that, saying, as you just said, that you deserve something better, something that resonates with you more. The process of the grief, of opening up to other possibilities, of getting support, of getting community, speaks to a lot of inner work to successfully make that transition. What has surprised you most that you've learned about yourself in doing that inner work in order to make that change, in order to step outside of conventional medicine?
That's a great question. What has surprised me? There's a lot of surprises about myself. I mean, every twist and turn when you're doing this. I think what has surprised me are the things I'm learning from all the beautiful people I meet, all the humans that I walk hand in hand that are delivering awesome, amazing healing practices in medicine and exploring integrative, functional, holistic principles. And I think what surprises me most is really about all of us as collective humanity, that we're all wanting this. We all are seeking this, and there's not one way to do it right. And I think that's the most surprising thing is, I have found a method that worked for me, but what I love is that I'm seeing all these other people finding their own ways. And it's neat to see everybody having their own little spin on it, or they want to have in folding in little passions that they're interested in, whether it's peptides or, mold or, like there's all sorts of cool things in functional medicine. And so I really am humbled by the brilliance of the practitioners that are able to step up and go, I really want the next chapter of my life to be intentional. And I want the next chapter of my life to only be what I want to learn and do.
Mm.
And that's not what we're taught in medicine. We're taught to never cherry pick, right? You really address and serve all, which is beautiful. And I still am a family practice doctor at heart. I love serving all. But there is a point, if you're doing a functional or integrative model, many practitioners come to a point where they have to say no to certain things in order to make room for their very good yeses that they're really good at. So that is a surprising part that helped me see, wow, you can do this in many different ways. And it's really fun to see. I continue to get surprised.
I love that. I love that. And indeed, when you stepped into a different way of practicing and honoring your authenticity, that was, you said a decade ago, that was especially questionable back then, right? In terms of coloring outside the lines, right? And looking for
Mm-hmm.
something unique that is aligned with you and how you want to show up in the world, and practicing in a way that reflects Lara, right? Rather than a
Mm-hmm.
specific modality or a specific tradition or type of care. That took a lot of courage to do back then. And I appreciate that you clearly tried to pursue something different within the confines of your role
Yeah.
back then. And not surprisingly,
Yeah.
you met with rejection,
Sure.
which I
Mm-hmm.
think was probably commonplace a decade ago. What do you see as different today about the landscape, though, for practitioners who are looking to um, help us along this path of integrating more functional medicine principles into conventional care in a variety
Yeah.
of ways?
I think it is. It's such an amazing, beautiful evolution that we've seen in the way, medical economics has been, behavioral economics is at play. People are more savvy now. People are, for both good and bad. As we know, social media is a quagmire of, who knows what kind of information you're getting, but at least it's opening up the landscape where people are getting used to words, like functional and integrative. And even though this has been around for a long time, it's just more commonplace. And, you see a lot more consumerism of this, again, both good and bad. It's exposure, it's exposure. So it's less like it's introducing a brand new idea to a community, but rather I'm making this my own and I'm going to show you why, and I say this all the time in my coaching, like, sure, there might be somebody down the street that does a model of functional or integrative medicine, but they're not you. Like, you are going to have your own essence in there. And nowadays, with the way healthcare is, especially if we're standing on shoulders of brilliant people like Terry Walls, who has talked about how she had it work in the VA system, or, Jeff Geller, who has done group visits for over 25 years, and all these ways that are going to ask us to think about medicine differently. And that's the key. I think as a family doctor, I'm used to being a family doctor. You go into room A, you see your patient, you're done with that. You go into room B, it's like you just are used to these ways that become like second nature. It's like muscle memory. And that was hard for me at first to move out of that and go, oh, I guess I could question that assumption. Why would I assume I have to do it this way? I guess I could do things a little differently. And what if I used a health coach? What if I, had this thing I did in the beginning of each visit, or, I have my patients draw pictures, like all these cool things that I thought, well, why not do it this way? It takes a while to thaw out your roboticness and then just kind of plug in your inner creative muse. It's like, well, what do I want to make this about? So yeah, it's really nice to be 10 years in and seeing systems embrace it now, and full systems saying we want, we've got DPC models that are alive and well. We've got full systems that are seeing, okay, we've got lots more chronic disease. How are we going to handle this? And oftentimes in a big system, it starts with group education, which is perfect as a functional practitioner. You're very well certified to give group education. And then, that can be pitched as, we could do a department of functional medicine where I can do consults. And then that is the hardest part of my job. And then we give it to other wonderful, brilliant, supportive clinicians, health coaches that can carry out some of the motivational pieces. So I think that's the thing that surprises practitioners and myself and patients the most, functional medicine is so not going to work in the current system as it is, because it requires work on both sides. Patients have to come to that 50-yard line, just like the practitioner. And so unless we support that kind of change and transformation, it's the same as just saying, oh, take that and I'll see you in 3 months. And it doesn't work that way. We have totally to reinvent the way we deliver it.
That's an excellent point, and it brings to life for me something we speak of often around the necessity of really a clinical partnership. That it's not the practitioner fixing the patient, and that requires a shift in expectation and way of showing up in both people. And so much of the sort of sociocultural norms around healthcare do often drive a person to show up to kind of be fixed, if you will, by an authority, an expert. And chronic disease, as we know, is so heavily lifestyle mediated. There's no way. It's not possible to have a realistic expectation of someone fixing the lifestyle, right? That's promoting that. We can give ideas, we can give suggestions, we can create community. But the patient has to be in it, 100, as I like to say, not even 50-50, but 100 for that partnership. I've heard you before use the analogy of moving from transactional care, right? Where I show up, I have a problem and it gets fixed and I go away and I don't show up again until I have another problem, right? Or maybe I have an annual physical. But this kind of transactional, here's my problem, fix me. Here's my problem, fix me. Well-applied functional medicine speaks to this notion of transformational care. And I'd love for you to speak to that because the results are obvious of what it means for the patient, right? It's not just managing diabetes or managing asthma. Our goal is to actually promote its regression, ideally, right?
Right.
But what about the practitioner? What feels different when you move from that transactional care premise or goal to something that's truly transformational?
Well, the first thing that's different is we have to learn as a practitioner to distance ourselves from the outcome. Okay. Because we cannot take pride. We cannot take pride in their good outcomes, just like we cannot blame ourselves for their bad outcomes. And that is very much antithesis of how medicine is geared in the RVU model, in the medical home model, where they're like, well, if you've got all your A1Cs improved, you get paid more, or you get deducted, or all this stuff is really, it's unfortunately self-sabotaging. These practitioners are groomed to try and push for the A's on the tests. Let's just get you there. Let's get you there. And there isn't this, because then you feel like you did a good job. I'm a good doctor, No, that's not how it is. And so it was very humbling for me to learn quickly that I own nothing on their outcome, but I'm there to help them transform and to witness the beautiful transformation if they're going to take the invitation, right? And so there's a lot more psychology and a lot more of this like patience and support and awareness that not everybody needs functional medicine. Sometimes they're not ready for it. They think they are. But what they're coming to you for is maybe just validation on a symptom or on a diagnosis, and they really don't want or can't have the capacity to do the work. And that's okay. It took a lot of lessons for me to learn, how do I craft that message in a loving way that doesn't shame them, that doesn't say, oh, well, you're not going to do it. Okay, well, here's your information. Here's some education, and giving them options to get support that might not take a lot of my time because they're not ready for it yet, and then I serve my highest clients or patients that are ready. And I'm like, yep, I'm ready with you. I'm here. Let's do this. And that's the wisest way to do functional medicine, in my opinion, is not to try and just be this, zealot that tries to serve everybody and convince everybody that they need it. We don't need it. Not everybody does. And even those that do need it may not need it their whole time with you. They might need it for some support, and then they're doing great for a couple of years, and then they might come back. And it's this natural ebb and flow, of humanity that we need to really hold space for in a different way that's never done in conventional medicine. Conventional medicine, as you said, it's transactional, and it's with expectation you're just going to get worse. I remember how how we
Sure.
did diabetes. Like, well, you're pre-diabetic, but we'll just come back to me when you're diabetic, and then we'll kind of get you into diabetic
when,
education
when
and
it's
like,
severe enough to be diagnosable and treated in more palpable kinds of ways.
yes, because that's how our insurance system works. And so
Yes.
that's how autoimmunity would work. It's like, well, yeah, you sound like you might have autoimmunity. You certainly seem like that is, but nothing's checking. So just come back in 6 months. Let me know if you have any joints start swelling. And, it just felt really odd. And that's what we do. And so this is a beautiful way of saying, nope, we're not going to do that anymore.
Whew, I love all of that. And I love that you lead, Lara, with the importance of letting a certain expectation, an egoic drive, right? That can be innate for any of us, right? Um, and when you're forming a partnership and so much hinges on the patients being ready, willing, and able, as you well described, to make change, the practitioner investing themselves fully and showing up and doing the parts they can control, but detaching from the results. That is a big step. That can be so daunting, but I also hear in what you're describing, it can also bring a level of freedom in order to just focus on what you can control. But the detail that you raised around not being over invested in or attached to trying to convince everyone that they need functional medicine, I certainly have seen over the years how much that can drive overwhelm and exhaustion.
Mm.
When people are not feeling ready, willing, and able to invest in this partnership in order to move forward, the work that someone might do to try and convince or influence or persuade or fear monger people into it, doesn't that end up being the 10% of your time that becomes the 90% of your headache or your heartbreak in clinical practice?
Yeah. Right. Good point. Good point. And we all make those mistakes, right? There's an art to cultivating or onboarding or inviting or helping patients get into your service, right? And it's not just come on in. I mean, I made that mistake early on. I thought I would just hang my shingle, and I did. I hung my shingle and had an open schedule. Anybody could book with me. And I quickly learned, whoa, that was not the right way, because I needed to very, very intentionally invite people into different gated periods where I'm like, how are you feeling? What are you looking to have help with? And just really making sure we're a right fit. Otherwise, you spend a lot of energy pulling people through change. And that's not how it's supposed to be. It's inviting them to have that agency, because it is about agency. Functional medicine is built on agency, and our current medical system is not. It's built on authoritarian power of, here, take this pill, and then we'll just see what happens to your body. I don't know, because your body's going to do what it's going to do, but we don't know how to help you. Just take the pill. And like functional medicine is about, here, let me teach you so you can be an agency of your own health and help you, walk the path the way you want it. So it's totally different realms, but yet we're seeing them come together. And that's the exciting thing, is we're seeing more awareness. We're seeing health educators embedded in a bigger system. We're seeing lifestyle medicine becoming more of a razzle dazzle feature when you see health systems put advertisings out that we have, group education here now. We have all these things. So you're seeing that it's starting to become more aware, and they're catching up. And that's wonderful. It's really exciting.
It is. It is. It's amazing how much has changed in even 5 years, right? Much less a decade ago. But you have mentioned several things about the spectrum. It's not even the kind of the variety of things. I think it's this sort of innumerable spectrum of ways in which functional medicine informed care or fueled care can be delivered. And it is very exciting to see all these different flavors and options and styles and approaches and models. And I can also appreciate what you said, though, that in someone moving to away from a very structured, very rigid type of conventional model, that it could easily feel maybe a little overwhelming around, wow, there's so many other options in providing entrepreneurial or some type of hybrid care. And that can be overwhelming. certainly at
Mhm.
SAFM, I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of practitioners who, in addition to getting good, solid training in functional medicine, they've been looking for what's the perfect plug and play business template for me, right? I just need someone to tell me how to do it, right? So I get the basket of here's the legal stuff, here's the business stuff, here's the programming, here's the finance. It's, a cookie cutter, if you will, on the business side. And I get that, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of practitioners do not have any entrepreneurial experience. They don't have
Right.
business training, right? And so it is a gap. But how often people will spend
Mhm.
10, 15, 20, 30 or more $1,000 looking for this template, if you will, for the business side. And then maybe there's ease in implementing it, but they end up with something not
Mhm.
satisfying either, something that still doesn't feel authentic or resonate with who they are. And I'd love for you to speak a bit to that because, as you well said earlier, having community in order to get input, to get guidance, to get this type of support is really essential. It can be a space where even a very seasoned clinically practitioner can really struggle to turn it into a durable career.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is a good conversation because it resonates with me since we can see this across many industries, not just medicine. You can pay for what looks like a plug and play thing, right? Even college, you're going to college to get a degree, right? So the end is the degree, but then what? Then what do you do, right? But the whole
Mm,
essence of your training is the relationships you built in there and the people you learn from. And it's like, expecting a physician to graduate medical school and then not go to residency. You have to have some kind of training where you're bumping up against other people, other ideas, other examples, and you're forged in that fire of trial
mm,
and error of what does my community want. And so that's where I see practitioners, and I've been unprofessionally mentoring for about 6 years, professionally mentoring about 5. And I've met hundreds of practitioners in so many different communities, whether it's urban, tourist, rural, international, and they all have different needs. And this is where
yeah.
these plug and play models don't work because they're going to promise you all the razzle dazzle of here's your template for your legal copy. Here's your financial stuff. You just go ahead and make it. But is it going to fit your values? Is it going to fit your community? Is it going to fit what you need? Is it going to be able to be flexible to grow? How do you know this is going to work for you? Do you have somebody to talk it through? All of these things. And I've seen many people in front of me on Zoom as I'm coaching them when they've spent the 50,000 on these programs. And
Yeah.
the thing that's about everything is there's no guarantee in anything, right? We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to cling to something for quick, help me with my fear. I'm scared. And yet the best part to help you with fear is community. And you need somebody to be able to talk one-on-one with. That's the only way through fear. It's not just purchasing more things to add on and just protect you from this fear that it's not going to work. It's let's dig in. Let's talk one-on-one. Let's look through your stuff. What do you want to do? How do you want to serve? Do you have like an ideal demographic you like? So it's a lot of this personal transformation. It's very meta. It's very parallel to a functional medicine journey for a patient. They can pay for an expensive program that promises that will balance their hormones and stress. They can do that. But if they don't get that one-on-one care and they're left to do this by themselves and to implement, it's not going to be sustainable. They're going to end at the program and go, okay, I kind of maybe might feel better. I'm not sure, but I don't know what to do. And we miss that glue of the human relationship that we need to be able to talk with people in real time and bring our issues right there and go, hey, I need help with this decision. What do you think? I'd love to bounce it off of you. So yeah, I mean, as you can tell, I really love the support of mentorship and guidance because that I wish I had that, I had some programs that were great and I totally respect, I can name drop if people ask afterwards, but programs that were great to get me going, but it's because I did the student work of doing the book work, but it didn't really fit my community. So it's really
Yeah.
helpful to talk amongst peers and it saves you time because people have probably made and thought about the same decision you're thinking about and they can help you walk through it a little bit quicker.
And to your point, bypass a lot of influential marketing
Mm-hmm.
about ease and quickness, and you don't even have to think about this part. But maybe
Right.
the only thing more frustrating than not knowing the way is spending a lot of money to have someone point the way and then find out that's not where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you've mentioned multiple times this notion of practitioner activation, and you and I speak of this often. You have such an expertise in this area. We see many practitioners get deep training in functional medicine, right? In the science part, even the clinical part, and then even with maybe good mentoring, right? Good community support, lots of ideas, lots of possibilities available. Practitioners can still stay stuck. And
Yes.
this is where we keep layering on. Here's another class. Here's another consult. Here's another program, all the things, right? But what the practitioner is struggling with is that activation, right? They clearly are supplied with lots of knowledge, lots of skills, and maybe great ideas and tools. But going from having it all to actually activating themselves and doing it, doing the work, this is always so heart wrenching for me because we know the demand for functional medicine is just massive and it's so needed in our cultures and communities today. But I'd love for you to share a bit about what are some of those pearls? I mean, what keeps practitioners from being able to become activated, right? To
I
be
love
in that
this.
space of doing it rather than
Yeah.
contemplating it.
Yeah. Well, the first part is to hold yourself in grace because the way we're trained is specifically for not activating. Okay. We're trained to be really good worker bees. We're trained
Mm,
for a skill set and then we get plugged into a system and we don't question it. So,
yeah.
when you leave that system, and I'm talking only to entrepreneurs right now. I mean, obviously, if you decide to do that, the surprising thing is you're going to have to build or wake up these skills that you put to sleep in order to work fine in a system that wanted you a little bit of sleep, because when you're asleep, you work a little better and faster and more productive. But when you wake
Yeah.
up and you realize, I really want to do things differently, the call to do things differently is going to require parts of you that you may not be as familiar with, and you have to, kind of train up these muscles. And so that is the activation part. So here's what I notice when a practitioner says, well, I might take another class, or no, maybe I might get some more training or another certification. It's comfortable to stay in the learner mode. It's so comfortable to
Mm,
stay in that other mode of a worker bee and being a learner and saying, I just might not have enough knowledge. And that's never the case. Honestly, I show me one case where it's the case where they needed more knowledge. Maybe there are some. Most of the time, we are very well trained. We're
yeah.
practicing within the lanes of our licensure or in the scope of what we're doing. And we just are a little nervous to stick our neck out. And that is the activation piece that I love. I love like sitting with people in a circle in community and just really being that heart to heart of you've got it. We just got to figure out what part of it is uncomfortable for you right now. What part of that and get to that root cause, almost like functional medicine for the soul. Like what is that root cause right now that's making you think you don't have enough to get going? And we just chip away at it, right? We chip away. Is it that you're unsure about payment structure, unsure about whatever that is? We'll figure it out. We'll get it going. Let's nail it down. And oftentimes, that's again the magic of talking. It's a lot faster than trying to journal it yourself or figuring it out yourself. When you're talking it
Mm,
through with colleagues, you get over those blocks so much faster because you feel that energy of, oh, I'm not alone to feel this uncertain. I mean, everybody does, but we can activate and get past that and kind of get to that plateau of, oh, I've got this. This is really fun.
I think that's an excellent response, and even just what you led with permission to be uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that I've been trained in a system that expects me to behave in a very specific way. Like you said, maybe not think too much, right? Which can
Mm-hmm.
cause problems and hubbub. But instead, being trained to operate within a fairly rigid system, doing a very specific type of thing. And when you pull away those walls, when you suddenly collapse the box and just move it out of the way, it can be daunting for any of us to, okay, whoa, too much choice, right? Too many options, too many
Right.
scenarios. There is comfort in
Yeah.
the constraints and learning to get comfortable with the uncertainty, if you will, is like you said, a muscle that might be a bit weak and needs some slow, steady working out in order to regain its
Yes.
function.
And you just mentioned too something that made me think of, these boxes of programs that might say, here's how we help you start your business. That also doesn't help those people in the middle. Like you mentioned, sometimes there is, wonderful support and consistency with having a regular job that doesn't take a lot of your thinking because you're used to it. You've gotten really good at that. Why not just, there's so many options. Maybe you stay with that just for, maybe half time, a quarter time. And then you're, training up your other skills. You're working on your professional development. You're getting confident in how to do this. And that's the beauty of the world, is really up to you on where you want to take it. And that is overwhelming. You got this whole stage in front of you. Like, what do I want to do? And so that's where this professional assistance to activate what is deepest in you, what desire, what transformation are you most wanting to be your legacy, and it's fun to just uncover that little oyster or pearl in the oyster and seeing what people are interested in.
I love that. Even with what you mentioned around, maybe you stay where you are and create a functional medicine center, right? Maybe you apply all of your knowledge in group programs or group visits. We at SAFM are seeing an awful lot of more of these, what I call mosaic types of careers, right? Where you've got maybe one foot in the practice that you've had, and then a day, a two, or a week, you're building your own practice, or maybe you're doing part groups, part one-on-one. I was talking to a practitioner the other day who's actually got 3 different models going and dabbling a little bit in each one of them, which is really satisfying her to exercise different parts of her skill set and her personality. And I think it's exciting to see the industry and our society open up and make some of these options not as crazy making and more accessible. And I'm sure that varies, right, by community and culture, right? We all have to investigate where we are and what some of the intrinsic boundaries might be. But that leads me, I think this is a great question to wrap up with here, because with your vision and your experience, having mentored and supported so many practitioners over the years, what kind of clinician do you feel is most going to thrive in the next decade?
The first thing that came into my head was the humble one, the humble clinician. Because I feel like there's so much of this weird masking and flexing of all these thought leaders on social media that they have the answer. And we're seeing behind a lot of these masks. And, and I just think if we stay humble and we acknowledge that to ourselves and to our patients that we're here to serve, and we own, hey, that tech didn't happen. Sorry, that glitch didn't work. I'm here to serve you. And we just show up as human. And that we don't have to have it all figured out right away. And these fellow citizens and humans in your community are going to love that about you, because you're just humble. You're just real. You're relatable. So I think the successful clinician of the future is relatable, is honest, is very communicative, is really excited to walk that journey with their patient, but also not taking any ownership on the outcomes, but cheerleading them on and saying, I'm so happy when you transform and I'm here for you. So yeah, I'd say it's just this warmth of clinicians that we're seeing come up because they're waking up in a system that really wants them to be a certain way. And so people are really craving that kind of relationship again, and I'm just excited to see it here.
I love that. And I think that's exciting news, right? Around opening up the possibilities for models and scenarios. But also, from what you've shared, I think is creating a more open environment for all practitioners to be human, which means not perfect, to be human, but to also really show up as who they really are, not trying to be someone they're not, but really able to fully own, embody their authenticity. And I think that's really, really good news. Does it bring uncertainty? 100%. Does it bring lack of full structure and plug and play solutions? Without a doubt. But the openness to really allow practitioners to fully be themselves and find a career, a way of working that's deeply fulfilling and feels like them, feels authentic for them, I think is just really exciting news. And I, for one, am super excited that you and your big heart and your deeply creative spirit and your keen mind are all part of helping practitioners in the world to function, to really thrive in this new reality in healthcare. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. I think you've shared a huge amount of wisdom that I know is going to inspire practitioners who are listening. So any final word of wisdom or inspiration that you want to leave listeners with today before we close?
Yes, I would say if you're listening to this and you're functional medicine curious, or you're just in a stage of your medical career where you are craving more autonomy, more flexibility, maybe just waking up parts of the golden shadow, as Carl Jung would say, those good parts of ourself we kind of put on the back burner to really get where we needed to go. And that's a purpose that we all walk through. But maybe it's time to wake them up and say, hey, well, how do we want to play? What do we want to bring to this healing environment? And, checking out these different modalities and how you might want to deliver medical care is exciting. And so just stay curious with that. If this episode made you think, journal what your thoughts are right when you're done with this episode. What comes to mind? What are you most curious about? And just hold space for that to see if there's a message in there that maybe you're craving a part of your day-to-day operations. And it may not even mean anything other than you can call that in now. But I hope that this episode leads you to stay curious and transform on your own way, because it's an exciting time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and your generous sharing, Lara. And from the bottom of my personal heart, thank you so much for the privilege and the fun of working with you. I'm really grateful for that.
Likewise. Thank you, Tracy.